Welcome to HalfPint Cooking.
Today we are going to make a crusty artisan bread, and I know that bread seems really scary for some people to make, but this, I promise, is one of the easiest breads ever. You have to have a pizza stone, but other than that, it's only 4 ingredients, and one of those ingredients is water, so it's pretty easy. So we just have a bowl here. This is our liquid measuring cup. We're gonna measure 1.5 cups. So if you see 1, so there's 1, and then we need just a half more, so we're gonna put water right up to there. And you want it to be warm, kind of hot water, okay? But you still wanna be able to touch it. So let's get some warm water in. So we wanna test the water first before we start measuring it because it has to be warm. If it's not warm, then it won't activate the yeast. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Now make sure your cup is level. A little bit more, oh, okay. Okay, now we're gonna put it in our bowl. Good. So this is dry active yeast and it just works really well. So it makes it really fast. What we need is 2 teaspoons of this yeast. So there's a teaspoon. Whoops. Just dump it in. All right. Now some recipes for bread is gonna say sprinkle it on top. I just say dump it in and then you use a whisk and just mix it up. So you wanna wait for this to dissolve a little bit. Sugar helps the yeast get activated, and that means it helps it grow. This recipe doesn't call for sugar and it's fine without it. But a lot of recipes you'll see that it says for bread to add water and the sugar and the yeast together because that just helps it grow better. And they call it activating it. Okay, so it looks like it's kind of dissolved. Usually this takes about 5 minutes and a lot of them get all frothy and foamy on top. This one's not gonna do it because it does not have the sugar. It will a little bit, but not really. So while this gets ready, I'm gonna teach you guys how to measure flour. The best way to measure flour is to weigh it out on a scale. If you don't have a scale, the next best way is to get your measuring cup and this is a teaspoon, this is just a regular like cereal spoon or just any spoon, and I'll show you first and then Jules will do it, and you just put it spoon by spoon into the cup because then it's not getting packed in there. It's just light and fluffy on top. And you want it to go over, right? Look, it looks like it's full, and it is. But you want it to do that. Then do you remember what you do with the knife?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Jules' favorite part. So you just tap it like this, and then you scrape it. So you wanna get a knife that has a flat edge on it like this one does, and you just scrape it off, and there you have 1 cup. For this recipe, we need 3 cups. 3 cups plus 2 tablespoons. So that's the big spoon on your little measuring thing. Okay, Jules, your turn.
That's perfect.
Perfect, that's 1 cup of flour. Now again, we need 3, so we're gonna do 1 more. And now we just need 2 tablespoons of flour. So you probably want to scrape these ones too, but you don't need to use the tablespoon no, we'll just scrape it to fill it up.
So 2 of these?
Uh-huh. Working together. Okay, now before we mix this, one thing I do love about this recipe is that you don't have to use a mixer because you don't have to knead it at all. You just stir it in until it's all mixed in and it's good. Okay, so we need kosher salt for this. Kosher salt is just a little bit sweeter. It's not quite as bitter as the other salt. If you only have regular table salt, then that's okay too. But you need 2 teaspoons, that's the TSP or the lower capital I or the lowercase t. So we need 2 of these. Now usually I hold it over the bowl, but sometimes we spill a lot. So if you want to hold it over your cup and you can pour in here because we don't want to pour too much. It's open. Okay,
type
stop.
of salt.
It is. If you look at this salt, it kind of has, they're like little flakes, if you can see that. They're not little balls like the regular table salt. So we just sprinkle it on top of our flour. Remember, we need 2 of these. Okay, I'm gonna sprinkle it on top. Now I'm just gonna give us a little stir because I want the salt to be mixed in with the flour so that one piece of bread doesn't get this big chunk of flour because we're not gonna mix this very much. Okay, now, yes, we just have a big wooden spoon and we're just gonna mix it. It might get a little bit sticky and a little bit hard, so if you need a little bit of help from an adult, just ask, but try to do it yourself. I wanna see if you guys can do this yourselves. So what flour I'm using is a bread flour. Now you can use just a regular all-purpose flour, whatever flour you have. I just really like this with a good high quality bread flour. Mix it. If you choke up and get closer to the bottom of the spoon, then you have a little bit more power. There you go. Now with our clean hands, make sure your hands are clean. That's all the mixing that this bread needs, which is really crazy. Because sometimes breads say you have to knead it for 10 minutes. This bread, Okay, now we're just gonna put this away in the sink and wash it. So what you're gonna wanna do now is you wanna cover it with some saran wrap or plastic wrap. Just cover it up. Now this is the hard part, because it has to sit here for 2 to 3 hours. That's a long time, huh? When we make bread, we just want to eat it because I love bread. But did you see how easy it was? It was really easy. So if you just do it in the morning or in the afternoon, right before dinner, because then after this, it's got to raise again. Anyway, we'll talk about that. But so we're gonna let this sit on the counter for 2 hours and then we'll come back and show you the rest. High five. Okay, it's been 2.5 hours since we made this bread and you can see that it is risen and it's all bubbly, right? So here, there's a few things that we need to do to get started. So you need your pizza stone. I know it looks really gross and dirty because we cook pizza on it and you're not supposed to use soap or anything to clean these off. So it looks gross, but it's clean. And we're actually gonna just put foil on top of it anyway, so you're not even gonna touch any of this. But it just keeps it really hot and it makes that crusty bread. And then I use this all the time and it looks really gross too, but this is a pan that I never used, and so I just keep this on the bottom, and then right before we put our bread in, after it's risen again, we're gonna pour some water in here and it's gonna create some steam. And that moisture and that steam in the oven is really what makes that crunchy bread on the outside. So right now I'm gonna put these in the oven and I'm gonna set the oven for 450 degrees. That's really high. So you put them in and then you turn the oven on so that these get warm with the oven. It's a little different. So I'm putting the stone in here, and then on the bottom rack, the very bottom is where I put this pan. And I turn it on to 450 degrees. That's about all the time we need for this other bread to rise. So let me find the end of our foil. This is just aluminum foil. Let me just get that much. Then we're gonna put, this is semolina. It's a little bit different. It's kind of like cornmeal, but a little bit smaller, a little bit finer, which I like better, but you can use cornmeal if you want, or you can just use flour, and you just put it on the bottom of this, and that's what they put on the bottom of pizzas, or cornmeal, whichever one, but I really like the semolina. So then, that's where you're gonna get your hands sticky. Okay, now we can save this plastic because we need to cover up our bread again. So remember, we try not to waste and we try to dirty as few dishes as possible. So here's our flour. What I always do is I just sprinkle a little bit of flour on top because it's really sticky. This is one of my favorite kitchen tools. It's called a bowl scraper. But then I just scrape the sides like this. These are nice because they mold to every bowl just by your hands. It's like a spatula, but just a little bit wider and better. Okay, so this part, this bread, you wanna work it as least as possible because then it gets really sticky. So what you're gonna do, Jules, is you're gonna pick it up. Just gonna show you. See, I'm really getting it like this. Now, do you wanna pick it up?
Pick all that up?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
And it's really sticky, huh? Now we kind of want to, here, I'll show you. Sorry, this is kind of tricky. Because it's so sticky, you just kind of want to wrap all of the ugly sides underneath, and you just want to make it pretty on top, and then we just plop it on top. And guess what? That's our bread. That's all we have to do. And then we're gonna sprinkle a little bit more flour on top just so it doesn't stick to our plastic. So there's one side that's a little bit wet because that was getting the condensation from the bread. So you just wanna use the other side that's not all wet. And we're just gonna let this sit for about 20 minutes. The oven will probably be ready before we are, but we want this to get a little bit bigger, kind of like doubled in size. Now we're just gonna clean up. Okay, so our bread has risen. You can see that it's a little bit bigger now. It's about doubled in size and our oven is ready. So we take the plastic off carefully and we wanna score it. And that means that we wanna make some lines. You know, when you get that fancy bread, there's some lines or a square. What we do is we have a very sharp serrated knife. This is huge. Now, if you don't know how to use a knife, make sure you have an adult's help. Jules says that she wants to try it this time. So I'm gonna show you one time and you just wanna be really fast with this. So watch, I'm gonna kind of hold it and I just make a line like that. That's all you have to do. Do you think you can do it? It's tricky. And now your hand is all stuck. See, so it can be tricky. So yeah, we just want to do it fast. You want to get in there deep. It's okay, it doesn't really matter what it looks like. So when we open the oven, we're just gonna set this on top of the pizza stone. And while the oven is still hot, I have about a cup of cold water. Now we want cold water because the oven is hot and the pan that we left inside of there is hot. And so it's gonna create more steam when we add cold water, and the steam is really what makes the bread so good.
That must be good.
Okay, so watch what we do. Okay, I was just very careful. Do you want me to do this?
Yeah.
Okay, so our pan is sticking out just a little bit right here. I'm gonna quickly pour the water in, it's creating steam, and then close it as fast as possible to capture that steam inside the oven. And now we set the timer for 30 minutes and then our bread's done. Okay, our oven is ready. Our bread is finally done. But the sad part is you still have to let it cool down. But we made bread and I'm gonna get it out of the oven now. So we just wanna make sure we're very careful because it's really hot. You can use oven mitts. I like to use these old towels. But we're just gonna get it from the foil. You can leave it. Look at that. Look at that beauty. There's one and there's another one and then there's kind of half of one that you did, huh? That's okay. So here's our bread, guys. This is what we just made and this is what you can make too. But it was really easy, right? It wasn't very much work. You saw how easy it was. So now we're gonna let it cool completely. You can cut into it right now, and I love hot bread. So we do sometimes, but when you cut into it right now, it gets all squishy and it feels a little doughy inside still. So I do really recommend letting it cool down. I am gonna take it off of the foil. The foil actually doesn't, it's not hot. Feel the foil. Is that hot?
Why does not that? No,
Is that weird?
It's been cooking for 30 minutes.
I know, so crazy. We're gonna take the bread is hot, off of the foil, because then it starts to sweat and it gets all soggy a little bit on the bottom. So we take it off of the foil and we have it on a cooling rack right here, and we're just gonna let it cool down for about a half hour. But that is what we made. Thanks for watching another episode of Half Pint Cooking. Please try to make this. I know everybody that I've given this bread to loves it. So subscribe, share, make it, send pictures. We'd love to see what you're making. Get creative too. Thanks. Wow, this is boring. Hey, welcome to Half Pint Cooking. Say, I'm Jules.
I'm
Okay, let's try that again. If you don't have a scale, the next best, oops.